Has this ever happened to you? You walk into a room, carrying nothing but your quiet presence, and suddenly the atmosphere shifts. Eyes follow you, conversations stumble, and you feel the strange weight of being both admired and silently resented. Carl Jung once warned that what others envy in us is often what they have repressed in themselves. For the empath, this truth cuts sharper than most. Welcome to Library of Thoughts. If you find wisdom here, remember to support and subscribe so together we can journey deeper into the hidden psychology of the soul. The empath moves through life as a mirror, reflecting back to others the emotions they dare not admit. She does not need to boast of her light. It leaks through her pores in her gentleness, her listening, her ability to feel. And yet, precisely because she sees into shadows, she awakens envy in those who secretly fear their own inadequacy. What she stirs is not hatred in its rawest form, but a subtle, simmering unease, the kind that creeps even into the hearts of friends, lovers, and kin. Why? Because in her presence, masks tremble. The carefully constructed facades people use to protect their fragile egos begin to crack. Her intuition does not accuse, but it reveals. And when a person feels revealed, they feel small. They see in her what they are not, patient where they are restless, attuned where they are numb, compassionate where they are hardened. This is the birthplace of envy. Not mere jealousy of what one owns, but bitterness at what one is. Jung taught that envy is the shadow's howl against the light of another's being. It is the ego, starved of wholeness, raging at the sight of someone who carries within them what the ego itself has repressed. When you, as an empath, extend kindness, others may receive it as condescension. When you offer understanding, they may hear judgment, not because of what you do, but because of what they cannot face within themselves. Think of it. The empath walks not with armor, but with openness. Yet openness itself is threatening to those who live behind walls. Imagine standing in front of a mirror when you've spent years avoiding your own reflection. That is what your presence does to them. They do not envy your possessions, but your essence. The way you can sit with silence. The way you can carry both strength and softness without contradiction. And here lies the paradox. The empath does not try to provoke, but she cannot help but provoke. Her very being calls others to see their own disowned fragments. Some are grateful, drawn to her warmth, but many are unsettled, for in her they see the life unlived, the emotions buried, the humanity denied. You may feel this without words, friends who subtly undermine, partners who compete instead of cherish, relatives who disguise criticism as concern. The empath becomes the lightning rod of envy, not because she seeks power, but because she embodies a different kind of power. The quiet power of authenticity. The weight of envy rarely arrives as thunder. It creeps like mist. At first, it shows itself in glances too sharp, compliments too laced with irony, silences that feel colder than they should. The empath notices, though she often pretends not to, for her sensitivity is not only a gift, but also a burden. She feels what is unspoken, long before words are uttered. Jung would say that envy, when left unexamined, takes root in the unconscious and grows into projection. And so, those who cannot reconcile their own wounds unconsciously project them onto the one who stirs them, the empath. You may ask, why does this happen even among those closest, among family, among lovers who once swore devotion? The answer is unsettling. Intimacy magnifies shadows. The closer someone is to you, the harder it becomes for them to ignore what you awaken within them. A stranger may admire your kindness from afar, But a partner may resent it when it exposes their lack of patience. A sibling may love your gentleness, yet quietly despise how easily others are drawn to your warmth. The envy of strangers stings, but the envy of loved ones cuts deep, for it carries betrayal hidden beneath its surface. In Stoic wisdom, envy is seen as slavery, a chain that binds the soul to comparison, keeping it from its own freedom. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste time worrying about what others think, for their judgments arise from their own inner blindness. And yet for the empath, detachment is not so simple. Her heart is woven with threads of connection, her identity tied to the energy she feels. She does not merely see others' pain, she absorbs it. And when envy is directed at her, she feels it not as an attack, but as a wound to her very spirit. But here lies the deeper truth. What others envy most in the empath is not her sensitivity alone. It is her refusal to become hardened. She walks through storms without turning to stone. She bleeds, but she does not close. And this capacity to remain open in a world of armor unsettles those who cannot imagine life without their masks. To them, her softness feels like superiority, though she has never claimed to be above them. Her authenticity feels like accusation, though she has never spoken a word against them. Have you noticed this in your own life? How sometimes your quiet resilience irritates more than your victories? How those around you dismiss your insights until they repeat them as their own? How the very people who once leaned on your strength begin to resent that they need it? This is not your weakness. It is proof of the mirror you hold up. People do not envy you because you boast. They envy you because you reveal. Envy is the shadow's rebellion against light. It is the unconscious whispering. Why does she embody what I have lost? Why does she live with a freedom I cannot taste? The empath does not set out to provoke this cry, but her existence alone is enough. And in this dynamic, she is faced with the oldest question of all. Should she dim her light to soothe the shadows of others, or should she let it burn, knowing it will draw both love and resentment in equal measure? To dim the light is the temptation of every empath who has felt the sting of envy. She learns early that her brightness unsettles, that her natural grace can invite hostility. And so she experiments with shrinking, speaking less, softening her laughter, downplaying her gifts. Yet even this sacrifice does not protect her, for envy is not appeased by humility. It thrives on comparison, and comparison will always find fuel. Jung would say that to suppress one's essence is to betray the self, to feed the shadow rather than integrate it. And when the empath dims her light, she does not relieve others of their envy. She only wounds herself. The truth is that envy cannot be cured by the one who triggers it. It belongs to the envious soul, a message from its own unconscious, begging to be faced. But most people will not face it. To acknowledge envy is to admit inadequacy, and the ego resists this with all its strength. Instead, the ego cloaks its envy in criticism. It whispers, "She's too sensitive. She's not that special. She thinks she's better than us." These are not judgments of reality. They are defenses, shields raised against the shame of comparison. And yet you, as the empath, feel these blows as if they were daggers. You sense the subtle hostility beneath polite words, the small betrayals hidden in silence. The ache is real because envy twists intimacy into distortion. A friend who once cherished your insight begins to see you as competition. A partner who once leaned on your empathy begins to accuse you of being too much. What was once love becomes tainted by resentment. And this is the cruelest paradox. The very qualities that make you lovable are the same that provoke envy's bite. In the language of archetypes, the empath often embodies the healer, the mystic, the maiden untouched by corruption. These figures carry an aura of purity, and purity always confronts the shadow. Those who meet her see in her both what they long for and what they fear. They long for her gentleness, but resent their own hardness. They crave her authenticity, but despise their own pretense. This inner contradiction is not consciously chosen. It erupts from the unconscious like a wound that refuses to close. Stoic wisdom offers a lens here. Seneca once wrote that the wise man is not harmed by insult, because insult belongs to the one who utters it, not the one who receives it. But wisdom is not immunity. You, as an empath, feel the sting precisely because your heart is open. And yet, it is in this openness that your strength lies. To remain tender in a world of envy is not weakness, it is defiance. For anyone can harden, but only the courageous dare to remain soft. The question is not whether envy will arise. It will. The question is whether you will allow it to redefine you. Will you turn cold to ease the discomfort of others? Or will you walk with the quiet conviction that their envy is not a verdict against you, but a reflection of their own unclaimed soul? When envy festers, it often takes shape, not in open confrontation, but in subtle sabotage. The empath begins to notice patterns: the friend who withholds support during moments of triumph, the relative who praises with one hand and criticizes with the other, the partner who downplays her intuition as overthinking. These acts are not random, they are the unconscious attempts of the envious to level the scales. Jung described projection as the psyche's desperate effort to disown what it cannot bear. When someone envies an empath, they do not merely resent her qualities, they unconsciously try to drag her down to ease their own discomfort. It is a strange theater of shadows. On the surface, these individuals may still smile, may still claim loyalty, may still sit at the same table. But beneath it, envy gnaws, reshaping their perception of her. They begin to reinterpret her virtues as flaws. Her compassion becomes weakness. Her insight becomes arrogance. Her quiet strength becomes manipulation. This distortion is not truth. It is envy painting reality in darker shades. And yet the empath feels it all. She feels the invisible distance growing, the tension humming beneath words. She knows something is shifting, even when no one dares to speak it. For to envy an empath is to resent the mirror she holds, and that mirror cannot be broken without also breaking the relationship itself. Imagine for a moment living as such a mirror. Every interaction reflects not only who others are, but also who they are not. Some respond with gratitude, drawn into growth, but others recoil, refusing to see. Their envy becomes hostility, though often cloaked in civility. And the empath, bound to her own sensitivity, cannot ignore it. She lives at the crossroads of truth and betrayal, intimacy and alienation. Here lies the archetypal struggle. The empath as the light-bearer, cast into exile not because she harms, but because she illuminates. Throughout history, those who carried light, healers, seers, sages, were often misunderstood, even despised. Their presence was too sharp a reminder of human frailty. The empath today is no different. Her existence awakens longing, but also rage. She calls others to a higher standard simply by being herself, and this is intolerable to those who prefer their shadows untouched. What does this mean for you? It means you cannot rely on external validation as your compass. The moment you seek approval, envy will twist it. One day they admire you, the next they resent you, not because you have changed, but because their perception has. Your worth must root itself deeper, beyond praise, beyond criticism, into the soil of inner knowing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be indifferent to what makes no difference." And truly, the envy of others makes no difference to your essence. Their shadows are theirs to wrestle, not yours to carry. But the empath's journey is not one of detachment alone. It is one of discernment. To recognize where love ends and envy begins, where loyalty is genuine and where it is poisoned by resentment. For not everyone who claims closeness deserves access to your energy. Some are drawn not to your light, but to the chance of dimming it. Discernment becomes the empath's shield, not the cold steel of cynicism, but the quiet clarity of vision, to see who truly values her presence and who secretly feeds on it. To recognize that envy, left unexamined, will always seek to consume what it cannot become. This is not paranoia. It is psychological truth. Jung reminded us that what we refuse to integrate becomes dangerous, and envy, when denied, becomes poison disguised as companionship. The empath often wrestles with guilt for seeing this truth. She tells herself, maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But her sensitivity is not a flaw. It is the very compass meant to guide her through the fog of hidden emotions. The unease she feels is real. The subtle undermining, the passive withdrawal, the veiled criticism, these are the fingerprints of envy. And to ignore them is to abandon her own intuition, the very gift that defines her. Think of how many times you have silenced your knowing, giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who has already shown their envy in 1,000 small ways. How many times you have explained away their dismissive tone, their reluctance to celebrate your victories, their need to compete rather than support. Each time you dimmed yourself, thinking it would preserve harmony. Yet harmony bought at the price of your truth is nothing more than self-betrayal. The Stoics would call this a failure of self-possession. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. The empath must accept that others may distort her essence, may call her names, may twist her purity into arrogance. But their misperception does not define her. What defines her is whether she stands firm in her essence or bends to the pressure of envy's gaze. Archetypically, this is the initiation of the healer into sovereignty. The young empath begins as the open heart, giving freely, absorbing endlessly. But as envy wounds her, she is forced to choose. Will she remain naive, bleeding for those who secretly resent her? Or will she step into the role of the wise woman, the queen, who no longer allows her throne to be shared by those who would tear it down? This evolution is painful, for it means letting go of relationships that feel familiar but corrosive, letting go of the hope that everyone close will understand or support her, letting go of the illusion that light can exist without casting shadows. But in this letting go, she gains something greater, the power to stand untouchable. You may feel this, stirring within you now the sense that your journey is not about changing others, but about claiming yourself. That envy will always exist, but its power over you depends on whether you allow it to shape your self-image. When you recognize envy for what it is, a shadow projection, not a verdict, you stop carrying the weight of others' wounds. You allow them their struggle, while walking free in your own essence. And it is here, in this detachment, that the empath begins to rise, not as a martyr to others' envy, but as a sovereign soul, immune to the poisons of comparison. ChatGPT Janoi. To rise as sovereign means to no longer be swayed by the shifting winds of others' perceptions. The empath learns that she is not responsible for the shadows others refuse to face. She is not required to heal envy by shrinking, nor to soothe resentment by silencing her gifts. Jung insisted that true individuation requires us to stand apart from the collective, to bear the loneliness of being authentic even when the tribe resists. For the empath, this loneliness is the crucible in which strength is forged. Envy thrives on comparison, but comparison dies in the presence of self-possession. When a woman knows her worth, she becomes untouchable. The whispers of envy may continue. The subtle sabotage may persist, but they no longer penetrate. Why? Because she no longer measures herself by the eyes of others. She knows that their envy is not a judgment against her. It is a confession of their own longing. And what is longing but the soul crying out for its missing pieces? Have you felt it? The shift that comes when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop begging to be understood, when you allow others to misinterpret you and yet remain unshaken. This is freedom. The empath who once bled from every subtle wound now becomes the one who bleeds no more, not because she has hardened, but because she has rooted herself in truth. The Stoics echo this freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." To the empath, this means refusing to mirror envy with bitterness, refusing to close because others live closed. Instead, she embodies a paradox, a softness that remains strong, a strength that remains soft. She holds compassion without self-betrayal, love without self-erasure. And so the archetype evolves once again. No longer merely the healer, she becomes the alchemist, the one who transmutes poison into power. Envy, once her wound, becomes her teacher. Each betrayal has carved wisdom into her bones. Each criticism has forced her deeper into her essence. Each attempt to dim her has only revealed how unquenchable her light truly is. This transformation is not about superiority. It is not about proving the envious wrong. It is about transcending the entire battlefield of comparison. The empath does not rise to dominate. She rises to be free. She rises to walk in alignment with herself, leaving others to wrestle with their own shadows as they must. And here is the hidden gift. When she no longer fears envy, she no longer fears closeness. She sees that some will envy, yes, but others will be inspired. Some will project their shadows, but others will awaken their light. The empath does not close her heart. She simply learns where to place it. Her boundaries become her temple, her discernment her priestess, her authenticity her crown. The woman who was once wounded by envy becomes the one who no longer notices its sting. She does not ask, "Why me?" She understands. Her light was always meant to provoke. It was never hers to hide. To live without fear of envy is to step into a rare kind of power, the power of being unapologetically oneself. Most people, chained to the collective, bend under the pressure of comparison. They mold their identities to fit what is safe, what is accepted, what does not provoke. But the empath, once she awakens, no longer lives for safety. She understands that provoking envy is not a curse, but a sign that her light has pierced the darkness of denial. Jung wrote that the greatest burden of the self is to carry the weight of individuality. And indeed, to stand as an individual is to threaten those who cling to conformity. The empath embodies this individuality, not because she rebels outwardly, but because her essence refuses to be copied. Her depth cannot be imitated. Her intuition cannot be stolen. Her authenticity cannot be replicated. And it is precisely this uniqueness that fuels envy. For envy always arises where imitation fails. Think of those around you who tried to diminish you, who rolled their eyes at your insights, who grew silent when you succeeded. Did their envy ever truly harm your essence? Or did it only reveal the limits of their own? Each attempt to dim you was not proof of your weakness, but confirmation of your difference. And difference is the birthplace of destiny. The Stoics remind us that the opinion of others is nothing more than wind. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The empath learns this deeply. She cannot stop envy from arising. Envy is as ancient as the human heart, but she can stop allowing it to chain her. Her reaction becomes her liberation. She no longer absorbs envy as poison, but sees it as evidence. Evidence that she has become mirror. Evidence that she has touched a nerve. Evidence that her very being is undeniable. And here is the paradoxical beauty. Envy, when witnessed without attachment, transforms into confirmation. It confirms that you live authentically in a world that thrives on masks. It confirms that your energy awakens what others have buried. It confirms that your presence matters more than you have ever dared believe. You may feel the ache of betrayal still, the sting of friends who turned distant, of lovers who became competitors, of family who cloaked envy as concern. But these betrayals no longer define you. They become the sacred teachers that pushed you into sovereignty. Without them, you might never have claimed your boundaries, never have stepped into your own power. Envy was the fire, and you are the gold it refined. And so the empath completes her transformation. No longer the naive healer, no longer the fragile mirror, she becomes the sovereign soul who walks unshaken. Envy follows her still, but it no longer binds. She sees it, she names it, she lets it pass like smoke. Her essence is her own, untouchable, radiant, and free. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.